Hello, everyone. My name is Kevin Dorsey, and I'm a Senior Digital Marketing Specialist in charge of managing and moderating the SAP Concur community. We have seen a few questions appear on the SAP Concur community regarding some additional services we offer with regards to auditing expense reports. One of these services is Concur Detect by Oversight. I have with me today Chris Juneau, former Chief Marketing Officer of SAP Concur and current Chief Product and Marketing Officer at Oversight. Thanks for joining me, Chris.
Hey, thanks, Kevin, for having me on board.
Yeah, appreciate you doing this. So I've seen some of our customers asking about the different auditing services we provide. However, they may not know the difference between these services and then what features each service has. So for today, I have just some questions for you that I believe your answers will provide our customers with a better understanding of Concur Detect by Oversight.
Sure.
All right, so let's just start with the basics. What is Concur Detect by Oversight, and what does by Oversight mean?
Right. Great question, common question. So let's start with the by Oversight means. So what it means is that Concur Detect is a white label package solution that's sold by Concur, contracted by SAP Concur with its customers. But underneath it, the technology, the platform, is Oversight. So it's Oversight for T&E. And so we're providing the analytics and so forth. We're providing the workbench for the customer to do auditing, both prepayment and post-payment of their T&E transactions.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah, that does clear it up because, first thing is like, why the by Oversight? And so I think having that understanding of what's kind of underneath there is very helpful. So what kind of challenges is Concur Detect by Oversight designed to overcome?
I think there are a few. And so as I mentioned, we believe that customers have been doing this today, you need to take an end-to-end approach with regard to auditing your T&E process. Customers have done this historically for years. When Concur originally invented audit rules, I think it was probably 1998 as I went back when I was at Concur trying to figure out when did somebody create an audit rule? Like, if it's greater than, then this happens, green, yellow, or red flag, stop it and stop it in the workflow. So customers from day one with Concur have been trying to say, hey, can you just identify things that I may need to look at? And then our managers need to scrutinize. And then even though employees may be paid, we still want to go back and do further analysis on. That's just sort of been the history of expense reporting, certainly over the last 20 plus years. So now with Oversight is how can I apply artificial intelligence to that same end-to-end process? Because first and foremost, humans are not great at auditing large amounts of transactions. They can look at it and say, did this meet the criteria or not? And that's what an audit rule does. Did it meet the criteria or not? But when it comes to vast amounts of data, humans just aren't great at it. And so when you look at it, people thought many of the reasons people chose to automate their expense reporting is to get greater efficiency. And so now I've got this greater efficiency. I'm paying my employees in less than 2 days and so forth, minimizing manager time for approvals and so forth. They've built into this greater efficiency. Now they're going, okay, but what about the integrity of my process? And as my majority of my transactions in compliance? Are employees spending appropriately on my behalf, especially with travel ramping back up based on the stage of the pandemic that we continue to exist in. So what Oversight does is tries to take an end-to-end approach with Concur Detect by Oversight in terms of when expenses are submitted, identifying things that either don't match, receipt did not match the information in the expense type, or this is a duplicate, whether it be even including duplicate mileage, or is this just excessive? And so sort of think of it as it's a firewall for a financial process. Firewalls stop known bad traffic. Some traffic like, I should look at this later, but I think it's okay. And then others you just let flow through. So that's what we're trying to do from the end-to-end perspective, applying AI, looking for it's not an on or off like audit rules are. Like, did it match or did it not? Instead, it's like, let me be a little smarter upfront. And then after submission, What can I do to analyze, to spot patterns, look for certain behavior, looking for certain things? So that's what we're doing with Concur Detect for Oversight.
Great. Now, you did mention AI or artificial intelligence. So is that the main driver behind what's happening? Is there any machine learning? Is there any manual process to it?
Great question, Kevin. It's primarily artificial intelligence. And by artificial intelligence is our artificial intelligence have built statistical models. And then, so based on all the data that we've historically seen, based on the statistics we have, then as new transactions flow in, is it an anomaly or not? As I mentioned, audit rules are very black and white, Boolean. Is it greater than, if it is, flag it. If it's less than, don't worry about it. Well, with artificial intelligence, you're saying, is this an anomaly or not? Is this an outlier? For instance, is this person spending so much on lodging, or is this unusual mileage for a rental car? Or, hey, why is there fuel purchase, but there's no rental car? So it's looking for the connections, looking for the anomalies. Like, hey, and all this data, it doesn't make sense based on the statistics of mining much data over time. So it's primarily artificial intelligence looking for statistical outliers across various expense types.
Okay, man, that's a great way to put it. I like that. So, all right. Next question. As far as configuring Concur Detect by Oversight, what is the configuration process? Is there any ongoing maintenance that needs to occur? Or once it's configured, is there much support needed? Or is it once it's kind of configured and set up and running, it can kind of just go on its own with very minimal interaction or
Sure. So we work closely with Concur to define the set of exceptions or analytics that we would apply and so forth. A customer can be up and running in 2 to 4 weeks. And then what we do is a refinement session with that customer, literally tweaking the parameters, trying to reduce the noise in the system. Since we're analyzing every transaction within every expense claim, both in the pre-process and the post-process. After that, the system essentially becomes an audit workbench for our joint customers to interrogate. So the system, so once that refinement occurs, transactions are flagged, both in pre as well as pre-meeting upon submission, and then in post. And the idea is that the customer has an opportunity through that workbench to say, is this really out of policy? Is this part of a more risky type of spend pattern? Is this, do I have a training opportunity that I need to undergo? So it's essentially becomes an audit workbench that sits on top of SAP Concur.
Okay, great. So I think, most administrators or expense processors, they're like, hey, so this is going to do the heavy lifting for me, kind of a question. And you say, yes, it's going to do a bulk of the work for you. And I'm sure they're happy to hear that.
It's looking for the proverbial needle in the haystack. It's what it's doing for us. It's trying to identify the transactions the most important that should be scrutinized versus just looking for the needle in the haystack. It's surfacing the needles so that the auditors can go focus on those specific transactions and really trying to identify, is this a behavioral issue? Is it a training issue? Is it, or just something a little more nefarious that could be going on?
Gotcha. Great. Now, most of the time with these types of services, it's kind of helpful and beneficial for the site administrators, but on the SAP Concur community, there were several people that were asking, says, my report is in a pending external validation status. What is that? And how long does it stay there? Could you briefly explain that status? And is there a time frame it should move out of that status?
Great question. So what somebody is referencing is, and I'm talking about what we call prepay, which is sort of a misnomer. So what happens when an employee submits an expense claim, we'll run a series of prepayment checks looking for like fraud risk. Is this really an outlier? Hey, with OCR, does the receipt match what the expense transaction says it is or not? Third set, is it a duplicate? So you're trying to stop things that are just egregious that, hey, shouldn't even get to the manager yet. Hold on a second. So that's what this period of external validation, it's really oversight by detect, or detect by oversight, is externally validating that. And once validated, then allow us to flow on through. That should take that should be somewhere between 12 and 24 hours.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, we had several people, and they're like, well, what can I do? It's been in this status. And my reply to them was, well, unfortunately, because it's happening outside of SAP Concur, it's external, that you just have to wait for the process to finish.
And what we've done on our side, I actually had a call with a few customers this morning talking about that, is trying to improve that visibility in terms of where that status is. So we put additional checks on our side that if something is in that status for too long of a period of time, we then notify Concur, since ultimately Concur can ultimately move it through. So we work closely with Concur support to ensure that we have greater visibility and better communication to the customer in terms of their expectations of when should that be out of external validation.
Oh, great. So that'll help me out. If I get another question about that, I can say, well, now there's a process in place that notifies SAP Concur if it's been in that status too long. Great.
Exactly.
That's a nice enhancement there. All right, last question for you. What would you
Sure.
say are the main advantages to using Concur Detect by Oversight?
I think the main advantage by Concur Detect by Oversight is, as I mentioned, is the ability to look across vast amounts of data and to look for the patterns within that information to either point the administrators back, I have a training issue with my employees. Maybe I need to re-educate them on the travel policy, because God knows for many of us, we haven't traveled in a long time, or may not have traveled in a long time for business. So if you has the ability to look across vast amounts of data, to look for patterns in the data that could either be human error, I need training, potential risk, or even potential fraudulent behavior on the terms of employees. That's what this does. It becomes actually a financial control above and beyond what Concur Expense with its wealth of capabilities. It becomes an additional financial control over this mission critical second or third largest financial process within an organization.
Great. Well, I appreciate you again taking your time. I know you have a busy schedule. We appreciate all this information. I think it'll really help kind of clarify what Concur Detect by Oversight does and how it works. So for those of you watching, if you have any questions about Concur Detect by Oversight, please reach out to me on the SAP Concur community. You can find me under the username Kevin D. Thank you for watching.